The following thoughts may cause some people to feel uneasy. Life is a constant lie. You work 40 hours a week just to meet your basic needs. You might do that for more than half of your life. But what's the point? What's the point if nothing comes of it today? In other words, what if it's suddenly over tomorrow? Everything you own and the time you spend to keep owning things in this world are ultimately worthless. Because after that, whatever may come, infinity prevails. If nothing comes after death, if we as humans are simply erased, then strictly speaking, time no longer exists for us. But because we can't imagine anything other than the passage of time, you could consider this a kind of infinity. We are, for outsiders or for an eternally existing outside world, eternally dead. In total, you basically didn't exist at all. You have to consider if that's possible. What does infinity really mean? Infinity makes even 100 trillion seem tiny, since infinity never ends. The number 1 compared to a million is extremely small, yes, but the difference is finite. If the number 50,000 represented your life and a million represented death, you might think, okay, at this ratio, it's still worth something. Because the fundamental difference in this example is that death has an end here, even though the idea is somewhat paradoxical, since death is already the end. And a million times the end doesn't make sense and wouldn't have much more of an effect on you than just one end. In reality, the truth is, nothingness has no time. We assume that time and space only came into existence with the Big Bang. If you assume that life is completely over with death, then you have to assume that there is no consciousness, no sensation, no perception of time anymore. It's roughly comparable to sleep without dreaming or waking up in between. Sleep is a kind of foretaste of death. That means, purely logically, that if you lived on Earth for 10 to the power of 80 years, you wouldn't get any closer to infinity. And it would be, purely logically, not reasonable to invest in this life. This number comes from the estimated count of atoms in the universe. A 1 with 80 zeros, a number that we may never truly understand. So many years, but after that comes infinity. Infinity defeats everything. Another way to illustrate this is, if you divide any number, for example 1 by an extremely large number, you'll get almost 0. Even if the number is astronomically large, it will never be exactly 0. There will always be something tiny left over. But if you divide a number by infinity, you get 0. So, the infinite time after your death always wins, no matter how long you live. So that's all the reasonable, logical stuff. But humans don't just make decisions in a reasonable and logical way. Ultimately, we're not made up of zeros and ones. We have feelings, emotions, hopes. We all know that death is so powerful, but we do it anyway. We invest in this world, working almost our entire lives just to enjoy a piece of happiness. Worked for 40 years just to sit back and finally have some peace. And then? Barely 2 weeks go by before the next problems show up. Some kind of grief, an illness, or something else. You'll never find boundless happiness here. Of course, that doesn't mean you should throw your life away completely. We're here after all, and we have our responsibilities. To fulfill these, of course, we have to work, earn money, and so on. But not just to enjoy 70 years of life and then vanish. This world wasn't made for that. The circumstances don't allow it. It starts off very simply. You can eat something, but after a few hours, your stomach complains. You can't do anything without getting something in return. All happiness comes at a cost. Is that really so? Just imagine the following extreme example. We want to achieve the perfect life here, a person who always feels good here. Imagine the whole world joins in and tries to give one person endless happiness. Would we have succeeded? Still not. At some point, you've had enough of everything. As soon as you reach a certain level of worldly means, you already strive for the next level. Eventually, even the priciest cars and homes lose their appeal. Apart from that, constantly experiencing positive things doesn't work. Everything has its price. Those who haven't suffered can't truly appreciate life. It's probably not enough to just feed the body. Apparently the soul also needs to be fed. But how? Is the soul made of matter? Apparently not. So far, no atom of the soul has actually been detected. So what is soul food then? If we were just a body without a soul, then it would make absolutely no difference to all of existence, whether we were in the world or not. The results of quantum mechanics show us that the observer plays an essential role in the existence of the Earth. If we had no consciousness, we would simply be something that existed for about 80 years in this 13.7 billion-year-old universe, and then no more. So compared to eternal nothingness, it's worth nothing. We know that death plays a huge role for us. Every life will inevitably taste death, yet we still try to ignore it. So far, we've assumed that things will turn out just as they seem, namely that after death there is simply nothing. The body dies, and we think the same about the soul because a person appears lifeless after death. But how can we think that something no longer exists when we hadn't seen that thing before either? If you notice that your neighbor is no longer in the house, you immediately assume that he is dead. Or couldn't it be that he simply moved away? Nowadays, disbelief is sold as scientific, modern, and reasonable. But purely logically, it always makes more sense to have a belief than not to have one. That's surprising, but that's the nature of death and faith. By believing in a religion, you have nothing to lose. Because if that's not the case and nothing comes after death, you haven't lost anything. Because the infinity of nothingness wins. Everything you've experienced is no longer perceptible anyway, basically non-existent. The next case is, if you don't believe, it could be that life after death completely surprises you with how it unfolds. Then there's also the case where you believe in nothing and nothing happens. But then the same applies as in the first case, you can't experience what happened anymore anyway. Now, it could also be that you believe in a certain outcome and things turn out differently than you thought. That's another topic altogether. This thought experiment was just meant to show that, generally, having faith doesn't bring any disadvantages. At some point, no matter how good or bad your life is, in a moment when you don't expect it, maybe you do expect it, but most likely you don't, it will happen and your soul will leave your body. Maybe it will be the moment when your pineal gland releases very special substances, as some suspect. Because something very special happens. Basically, the only real thing, the thing that defines you, what the message has been after 115 episodes of this channel. Your life comes to an end. Then the question arises, what does your soul do? Where does the journey go? Was this just a short stay here? Your body won't make it out of here alive. But your soul, which can think about it right now, still has the ability to be aware of death. So maybe there's still time to change something about how you deal with this fate.